to Healthy Planet, the show for people who care about their health and the health of our planet on the ThinkTech live streaming network series. I'm your host, Dr. Grace O'Neil. Joining me today is Wayne Tanaka, director of the Sierra Club of Hawai'i. Welcome, Wayne. Thank you for being on the show. Tell us
It's great to
about
be
how
here.
you
Oh, sorry.
tell us about how you became involved in Sierra Club, and it's nice to meet you as well.
Um, sure. So I actually just started with the Sierra Club of Hawaii as a chapter director in October of 2021. Prior to that, I was working in the Office of Hawaiian Affairs doing public policy. So really advocating for the betterment of the conditions of Native Hawaiians in all the areas of relevance, which include not just environmental issues and cultural issues, but also too education and housing and criminal justice reform. But through the course of that work, we actually ended up working very closely with Marty Townsend, the past executive director, and you really got a sense of how critical the Sierra Club was as an advocate, in the legislature, before executive boards and commissions, and in the community. And so when Marty was stepping down, I thought it was important that we have someone, that someone would come in and hopefully continue the good work of the chapter.
That's wonderful. So, what kind of projects are you guys working on right now?
So we have I guess a couple of different categories of work that we do. One is um, connecting folks to the outdoors. So we actually were founded over 50 years ago with the vision of helping people, especially young people, appreciate the very incredibly unique things that we have here in Hawaii that make it so special. The plants, the animals, the landscapes that really you can't find anywhere else in the world. And so we've continued that work. We had a little hiccup during the pandemic, with social distancing and not being able to gather. But in the last few months, we have been restarting our outings and service projects, which help get people on the landscape, restoring native ecosystems, planting native plant species, and just learning about what makes Hawaii such a special place. And then the other aspect of our work is advocacy, because we understand it's not just it's amazing and awesome and so important that people are out there doing the work on the ground, but we also need folks, organizations, institutions to advocate for the things that we care about. The trees, they don't vote, they don't have voices, and so I really have to and same as our native animal species and ecosystems. So really it's up to us as people to carry that message and carry that voice. And so we do a lot of work at the legislature, advocating before Board of Land and Natural Resources, the Department of Health, the Land Use Commission, Public Utilities Commission, around things like protecting our water resources, upholding public trust, enforcing all of the legal protections that have been put in place to preserve what makes Hawaii so special. We also advocate for really pivoting towards the kind of native Hawaiian science and perspectives, and governance that we're really going to need as we're looking forward into a very uncertain future with the climate crisis. We have immense amount of knowledge and science and perspectives that we can really lean on, that will probably give us the best chance of creating a livable and survivable future for ourselves here in Hawaii.
Yeah, that's great. I was listening and you said that you are planting some native species. I was wondering what kind of native species are you planting and where?
So we actually have the Hawaii chapter is covers all of the islands, and we have groups on the different islands. So Oahu has an Oahu group, Hawaii Island has a Hawaii Island group, and so forth. And so these groups of volunteers lead outings and service projects where they do things like native plant restoration. So it's really throughout the islands. We have some really great work being done in Wawa. So on the third Sunday of every month, the Sierra Club hosts a native landscape restoration day where volunteers come out, they pull hale plants, native species that are specific to that region. Also on this island at Alamahamoe, there's a kind of like a forest that's being grown by volunteers that tend to that
really?
space fairly frequently.
So where
Um,
is that exactly? I'm not familiar with where that is.
Ala Mahamoi, it's more towards like I guess would say Pearl City side on
Oh,
Oahu.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And how big is this forest so far, and what kind of trees do you have?
Uh, I'll have to I don't have the exact like acreage in on the top of my head, but we have I know we've had one of the things that we've been doing is having these virtual tree planting events where we give away native trees, and this came out of the pandemic when we couldn't really gather to do tree planting, but we could distribute trees and provide them with folks with expert advice about how to best care for them and nurture for them. And so some of those trees we ended up putting up at Alamahamoy as well. And so yeah, um yeah, everything from Ali'i to um uh um shucks. Totally am blanking on the name. Um
Palikoa, like the good
Alahe'e.
friend Palikoa or whatever, those
Yeah,
are
yeah,
the.
Alahe'e, Koa. I mean there's um
Mhm.
trees that are particularly suited for that kind of climate.
That's cool. And then, so besides the native restoration, you guys have other events too, like other hikes. I was looking on the website. It
Mhm.
looks like you offer a lot of hikes, and I think that's kind of a nice way for you to get to know people. I mean, who are interested in hiking and preserving nature. So, and so you said you have some people who are paid people at Sierra Club, but then there's also, I'm sure there's a huge volunteer crew as well.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And so we do have about seven paid staff that carry out the programs and work
Hmm.
but really we are a volunteer driven organization. So our executive committee on the chapter level, they're all volunteers. They're basically my boss. The island groups that I mentioned earlier, they have executive committees that are also volunteers and they also coordinate all of the work on the ground, especially
Hmm.
with respect to the outings and service projects.
So tell us about the advocacy that you guys are currently working on.
Okay. Well, folks probably would best recognize us from our work around the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. It's that 80-year-old World War II era uh, underground storage tank system that's perched just 100 feet above the sole source aquifer for Oahu. And it's in the news on a weekly, if not daily basis. And we've actually been engaged in efforts to prevent what has happened. In November of 2021 for the last 8 years or so, ever since that last big leak in 2014. And so we've engaged in litigation, and really that's how we were able to compile a lot of the technical information, a lot of the data that really illustrates how incredibly inherently dangerous this facility is. And then with that data and with the information, we're able to also kind of start spreading the word to the community a little bit before that big spill in 2021. Unfortunately, it was not enough to prevent that calamity from happening, but we are continuing to work to ensure that no further harm befalls our aquifer, befalls our island because of this facility, and also pushing for remediation of the environment, pushing for the decommissioning of this facility permanently so it can never be used again for
Hmm.
hazardous material storage, and also for justice for the thousands of people that were affected, and many of whom are still very very sick and still struggling with the health and financial fallout of the crisis. Um,
So I also see stuff on the website for the East Maui
mhm.
streams, and I guess if you could tell us a little bit about that. I wasn't aware that there was anything going on there.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So there's tens of thousands of acres of public lands in East Maui that have been historically diverted for sugarcane plantation activities in Central Maui. And for the last since the 1980s, essentially, the stream diverters have been on what are supposed to be temporary 1 year revocable permits, and even though they applied for a long-term lease in the early 2000s, they still haven't conducted an environmental assessment, or actually, sorry, I'll take that back. They did just finish an environmental impact statement in 2019, but it took them, over 15 years to do that. Um, and all this time, they've been diverting water, right? So until some more recent historic decisions by the Water Commission, they were taking anywhere from 120 to 400 million gallons of water per day
Wow.
for a long, long time, right? And because they're using fairly antiquated irrigation infrastructure and earthen reservoirs, so much of that water is wasted.
Mhm.
And so, although we have had and the community has had major victories in having stream flow ordered restored for now for throughout the entire license area, it's called. There's still issues with waste, which it's water is the most precious resource, and our laws and constitution require that it be carefully managed and used for the good of both present and future generations, and being mindful of all of the ecological needs that water serves, as well as the needs of riparian like landowners and subsistence communities and farmers and so forth. And so so our work has really been to kind of uphold that concept, that public trust in water, to get to reduce the waste, and if we can save millions of gallons of water per day from leaking out of these concrete ditches and these earthen dams, then there'll be more than enough water to both support the watersheds and the ecosystems and the communities in East Maui, as well as support Central Maui agriculture and the needs of upcountry Maui.
So the sugar plantations are still active, or what are they different kinds of plantations now? I wasn't aware,
Um,
just my own ignorance, but
yeah, so Alexander and Baldwin had about 17,000 acres of land in Central Mali where they were doing sugarcane cultivation. They decided in, I think, 2016 to halt sugarcane production and ended up selling, uh, selling their land to Mahipono, which is now pursuing diversified agriculture in Central Mali. And so, there's still, building up towards, the full grow out of what they envision for that land. Um, and we're not opposed to that whatsoever. It's just more the matter of making sure that we um aren't wasting so much water and are able to balance the needs of both Central Mali agriculture as well as East Mali ecosystems and watersheds.
and then I also see there's some involvement in energy justice for all, and
Mhm.
electricity costs. What is that campaign about? That campaign.
So the Sierra Club, we've been uh, one of the folks leading the charge in pushing Hawaii to be a leader in our response to the climate crisis. And part of that is establishing these renewable energy portfolio mandates that basically commit the state to going to full renewable energy sources in the by 2045, being carbon negative. And however, it is also super important for us that as we transition towards this renewable future, that we're doing so in a way that is just and equitable, and mindful of the ways that certain communities in particular have been burdened by not just fossil fuel burning facilities, but also landfills, hazardous waste storage areas, things that really have had real concrete impacts on the health of communities as well as the surrounding environment. And so, as we go towards this renewable future, we understand that we can't actually uh, do so in a timely, just manner without, fixing the systems that have, allowed for, these unjust burdens to be placed on certain communities. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great that solar energy is being encouraged. What other forms of energy are potentially possible in Hawaii?
uh, well, folks are looking at the full range of renewable sources, which, by the way, is also a public trust resource if you look at our constitution. And so again, that requires considerations of equity and all the different ways that it might impact other public trust interests and purposes. But beyond solar, we have folks looking at wind, folks looking at geothermal, even wave energy. I think in federal waters there may be a proposal that has been in the works for, I want to say, maybe a decade now. But of course, with all these things, the devil will be in the details and into how they're proposed and cited, and how communities are engaged to make sure they understand what's going on, and really make sure that especially if a community is going to be disproportionately burdened, that they are able to have real discussions about what would be a commensurate benefit, right? Like if we're gonna be leaning on them for it to meet the needs of the greater community, then how can we make it sure that it's most equitable and fair?
So, on your staff for the advocacy and the other activities, what kind of background do you have? Anybody who has, I mean, I guess you must have some lobbyists, and is there an attorney on the staff in
Mhm.
Hawaii?
We actually have,
Scientists?
yeah, so we have uh, an organizer with trained organizing background with labor unions. We have another organizer who has a master's in public health as well as a JD, so a law degree. I have a law degree from the University of Hawaii Law School as well. Um, we also have folks that are pursuing their masters and in environmental management as well as PhD in urban planning. And so yeah, so we have a pretty diverse skill set
Really?
that we've been lucky to
That's
harness.
wonderful. So, and I also see here that Sierra Club also has some advocacy regarding the climate crisis. What has Sierra Club of Hawaii been doing for the climate crisis?
Uh, yeah, so I mean that's one of the things beyond the Red Hill like existential threat. Just trying to think of how we can best prepare ourselves for the ongoing destabilization of our climate, and maybe even model a response that other places can follow. And so when we think about how we're going to survive the next few decades, there's really three things we need. It's water, uh, it's water to drink, and for all other things that we use water for. We need food, especially knowing that places like the continents are getting hotter and drying up, and there's supply chain issues and mega storms that may cut us off from the outside world, which we depend upon, unfortunately, for much of our food. And then uh, the third pillar, I guess, of resilience is really each other. You know, um, recognizing our relationships to each other and to this place, and making sure people understand that really we will need each other to survive. As Dr. Chip Fletcher talks a lot about this. He's a climate scientist with SOAS, but really it's shown in other places where disasters have happened that it's those communities with strong social cohesion, with strong social ties, of people that care about each other, that do the best in terms of recovering from disasters and being resilient. And if we don't do that, then we risk just turning on each other when times get rough, as we know they will. Um, and so a lot of our work is around those pillars, right? So advocating to protect our water from permanent contamination, advocating to uphold the public trust, that we treat water as a precious resource that it is. Um, Also supporting uh, you know uh, Native Hawaiian approaches to land stewardship and governance. And there are, again, this is, I'm not just saying this. There's published studies by folks like Dr. Natalie Kuroshima who have demonstrated that if we do pivot towards traditional agricultural methods and traditional footprints, we can actually begin producing food on a scale that could feed hundreds of thousands of people without imports. As has been done since time immemorial, and that's taking into account you know uh, changes to our climate, taking into account changes to land use like urbanization, um, and and really all of these things, I think we have a strong foundation for. And again, I'm kind of stealing this from Dr. Fletcher as well, but really that foundation of Native Hawaiian like science and land use practices and perspectives on our relationship to each other and to place and to all the things that make Hawaii so unique, all the living things. It's all there, but it's just a matter of are we willing to make that pivot, to make those political and policy concessions, that and not perpetuate, but actually start healing some of the harms and traumas and disparities and privileges that we are challenged with because of several decades, generations of oligarchical control and displacement of the systems that had worked previously for millennia.
Yeah, no, that's great. I want to now kind of turn directions and touch on what kind of things people can do to get involved in the Sierra Club. I see that there's a bunch of things on your website that sound very interesting. There's one area that says Neighbor Island Service Trips. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Really recommend signing up for our Malama newsletter, Sierra Club of Hawai'i /Malama, Malama, and uh, every month we have kind of a newsletter that goes out. But if you click on the island groups section, it'll talk about all of the service trips and outings that are being planned for the upcoming few weeks. And so that's a really great way to get plugged in, especially if you want to get on the ground, put your hands in the soil,
Mm-hmm.
or just learn about like all of the amazing things that we might not um, think about or notice, unless you're actually like looking for them and being mindful. So yeah, that's a great way to get involved with that section of our work. We also have, if you go to sierraclubhawaii.org/Red Hill, then we'll also have a sign up for action alerts about our advocacy in that area, as well as for other issue areas that you may be interested in, whether it's energy justice, um, or streams or water protection, yeah,
So that
public
would
trust
be
issues.
picketing or testifying at the Senate or House or something, or what kind of writing letters, what kind of things would people be doing in that case if they
Mm-hmm.
sign up for that? I see.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the situation and like what who decision makers are, the degree to which any campaign requires yeah, escalated actions or just engagement, civic engagement. So you get action alerts about testimonies that are needed at the legislature or before certain boards and commissions. There's some legal cases that I think people, it's helpful to have people there and to let folks know that people care about things like water security, climate security, and we'll also send out alerts for other events. Like we just past Sunday we had a walk for water at Alamana Beach Park, which had almost 500 people show up and from all walks of
Wow,
life. Yeah, it
that's
was actually
great.
organized by senior citizens by Kupuna from Honolulu and Manoa, and they did
Nice.
an amazing job of bringing so many different kinds of people
That's
together.
amazing. Wow. And then I saw that I don't know if you're still having this program because you had spoken about it being part of the pandemic, but I see a virtual tree planting. Are you still doing
Mhm.
that?
Yes. We
Wow.
just had one a few weeks ago in at Nanakuli Intermediate and High School.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was probably our most successful ones in terms of getting trees out to the community. We're probably going to take a little break uh, because of like the weather conditions. Right, if it's hot during the summer, then trees have less of a chance of surviving. So we usually try and time them for the fall and
Uh,
spring, just to give the trees the best chance of thriving.
mhm. So when you give away the trees, what kind of species do you have available for people?
It really depends on where we're giving them out. So, at Nanakuli, we're giving out kind of more trees and plants that um, um, are from like drier climates, right? So, Ilimapapa, Kua'i'a, we had some Mauhauhele, what else? Pohinahina. Uh, yeah, it really depends on what region we're basing our event out of.
And where did you obtain these trees from? Are there volunteers growing the trees, or did
We
you
actually
get?
we get them from Huiku Maliola, which is a native plant nursery in He'ea.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's great. And I also saw this other program, High School Hikers. This sounds great. And is this led by, I'm assuming, an older person than someone in high school, or is it mostly driven by people in high school?
Uh, Yeah, the high school hikers program, we have folks willing to coordinate on our end. We actually really could use, especially if you're a teacher and willing to help coordinate on the school end. There are high school hikers is a long running program with the Sierra Club of Hawaii. But over the years, because of liability issues and there's lots more paperwork and bureaucracy that you have to navigate, and so it's a little hard to sustain these days. But if there are
Mhm.
any teachers willing to kind of help take that on, it's a great way to get youth out, onto the landscape and learning, and not just going on a hike to go on a hike, but really like opening their eyes to all of the really like magical and incredible like things that are still out there.
Is it an organization that is at all high schools, or only some high schools have a chapter where there's a teacher that can be the leader of the chapter?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So we don't have any active chapters right now. I think just because of, well, first of the pandemic, and then getting that kind of staff support where everything teachers been going through has been difficult. But it's really more depending on the teacher and the school and their willingness to kind of participate.
No, that's great. So we're running out of time, but we're going to have to wrap it up soon, but I thank you
Mhm.
so much for being on our show. I'm Dr. Grace O'Neil. This is Healthy Planet on the ThinkTech live streaming network series. We're going to be talking to Wayne Tanaka of the Sierra Club of Hawaii. Thanks to Michael, our broadcast engineer, and the rest of the crew at ThinkTech for hosting our show. And thanks to you, our listeners, for listening. I'll see you in 2 weeks for more of Healthy Planet on ThinkTech, the show for people who care about their health and the health of our planet. I will be talking to the Student Animal Defense League of the UH William S. Richardson School of Law. If you have ideas for the show or questions for my future show guests, please contact me at healthyplanetthinktech@gmail.com. Check out my website at graceinhawaii.com or Instagram at graceful365 for more information on my projects, including future show guests. I'm Dr. Grace O'Neil. Aloha, everyone.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.